All right, welcome to tonight's Idaho Trails Association Trail Master webinar. Tonight's talk is going to be by John Platt. He's going to be talking about great winter hikes. First off, I'm going to get started just by telling you a little bit about the Trails Association. So the Idaho Trails Association was founded in 2010 to promote the continued enjoyment of Idaho's hiking trails. ITA is all about stewardship, tradition, education, and preservation. Stewardship by caretaking the land. Idaho Trails Association's bread and butter is non-motorized trail maintenance. Tradition, we utilize primitive trail tools to do that maintenance. So instead of using chainsaws, we use crosscuts, Pulaskis, shovels, picks, things of that nature. And education, talking to folks about responsible use of our natural resources, putting on webinars like this to educate folks about that, and also to talk about, just like this, great places to go hiking, ways of enjoying our awesome resources, and then preservation, just trying to get people involved in preserving our awesome wild lands. Idaho is just has vast amounts of public lands, and it's such an awesome resource that not every state can say that they have. So just to give you a little bit of an idea about ITA's growth over the last decade, as you can see, the amount of volunteer hours that we've had over the last 10 years has increased tenfold, which is really impressive. A lot of that is due to our past executive director, Jeff Halligan, did a ton of work to bolster support and outreach, and just getting people to know more about the Trails Association. This year, this last year in 2020, you can see our hours were down some. I think that was mostly attributed to COVID. We still got a lot of great work done. So you can see we cleared over 175 miles of trail, had, 35-ish some projects, removed tons of logs. And then also we do have a wilderness monitoring program where we go out and look at trails and use sites in some of our wilderness areas. Still, well worth the time those volunteers are putting in. So how can you help? First of all, I would say become a member of the Idaho Trails Association. This really just means, making a meaningful donation of some kind. Every little bit helps. Sign up for some of our trail projects. I think here maybe the end of February, we hope to have our trail maintenance season projects up on our website. We try to have a good smattering of options so that people can pick something that works for them and their schedule and in different parts of the state. We have projects all the way from North Idaho down through Central and Southwest Idaho. There are usually a couple of family-friendly one-day options, some single-day and overnight trips, week-long vacation trips. We call them vacations because a lot of times those are pack supported and meals are cooked for you. Sometimes there's even a cook that comes with that. A lot of your gear gets packed in, so it's pretty cush for a work trip. This, I think, will be our third or fourth year with the women only weekend program. And actually this year we're going to be expanding to have 2 week-long women only projects. So really looking forward to that. We also have youth week-long. Those are for high school age kids from Idaho. You can also sign up for a monitoring project if the idea of going out and doing trail work isn't appealing, but you love to hike and backpack. Trail monitoring, wilderness monitoring is for you. These are usually week-long backpack trips where you're out surveying trail condition, or where there's sites like camps around lakes, maybe doing some cleanup, and you get to see some awesome places like the Gospel Hump or the Seven Devils. And then just be an advocate for our public lands, stay informed about what's going on and make your voice heard. There's lots of platforms for that. It's really easy to stay informed anymore with the internet about what's going on our public lands. So stay tuned for our project schedule, should be coming out soon. And if you do sign up to be a member, one of the nice things is you get a 1 month advantage. So as soon as the project schedule comes out, you have 1 month to sign up before the general public. And in some cases, we have some highly coveted trips that involve jet boats or airplanes that get you into some awesome backcountry that you would never see otherwise for like as little as $50. So pretty awesome way to get out, do some great work in an amazing place with some other awesome people. So if you're unfamiliar with the Idaho Trails Association, we do have a website, idahotrailsassociation.org. We're also on YouTube, where all of our presentations, including this one, are posted. You can just search for us on YouTube and you'll find our channel, and you can find past presentations. We're on Facebook, of course, and Instagram. A couple of general announcements. So last June, the Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation started a trails supporter program. This is not just for the Idaho Trails Association. This is all non-motorized trails in Idaho. And really, you know, this is just a way to try and secure more funding that is needed for our non-motorized trail maintenance. And every little bit counts. So to buy those stickers, and I think the idea is you buy a sticker every year and kind of start having a collection of them. As you can see on this one, it says 2020. You can go to the website, or I believe they're now selling them at REI, and they're like $10. So you can do your small part that way. And if you missed it, way back in May, the Outdoor Idaho did a show called Trailblazers, in which the Trails Association had a cameo talking about some of the awesome work that volunteers are doing to maintain trails in Idaho. So we just finished up our 2020 membership drive, and as you can see, it was awesome. We exceeded our goal of $25,000, a little over $31,000, which is really, really awesome. This is just money that will go to grow all of our programs. Thank you to everyone who's donated. The membership drive is never really over. Anyone can become a member at any time. So if you're interested in the Trails Association, you believe what we're doing, you can still go to our website and sign up to be a member. And other big things for the new year, we have a new executive director. We're very excited to welcome Mel Vining. She's from the council area, and really sad to see Jeff Halligan going, but excited to have Melanie on and have some new ideas coming into the Trails Association. And lastly, just wanted to know about our next upcoming webinar, Backcountry Cooking with Erin. So Erin, also known as the Backcountry Foodie, she started her own kind of online backpacking backcountry food website. Check it out at backcountryfoodie.com. She's specifically going to be talking about bonking. If you don't know that term, that's when you're out hiking and you just have lost all of your energy. Some people probably also call this hangry. So it should be really great. And this is geared towards anybody from day hikes to long distance hikers. I think everybody could learn a little bit about how to properly fuel yourself when you're out hiking. So that will be February 24th, about a month from now, 7 p.m. You know, there's information on our Facebook page already, so sign up for that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to John Platt. So John's here tonight to talk to us about great winter hikes and safety in the backcountry during the winter. Let me stop sharing my screen here. All right, John, I'm going to let you go ahead and get started.
Thanks for the great introduction, Pam. So tonight we're going to talk about winter walking, and we'll talk about safety, hazards, a little bit about definition of winter and walking, and then hopefully some inspiring ideas of places to go walk during the winter in Idaho. So I'm going to share my screen now. So you won't see me during the presentation. You'll just see lots of pictures and some ideas. I do have a time set aside at the end for comments and questions. So I look forward to those if you have them. So this is a picture of the Danskin Range near Arrow Rock Reservoir east of Boise. And I should start out by apologizing for any viewers who are in North Idaho, because I'm not really familiar with North Idaho. My time is spent has been spent in southern Idaho, all across the state, from the Oregon border out into the Lemhis, and a lot of time in central Idaho, particularly in the McCall area. So you're going to see mostly pictures and ideas from those areas. So to start with, a little bit about me. I've been out in the mountains in the winter for more than 50 years. I won't tell you how many more than that. I'm a member of the Valley County Search and Rescue, so I get to see things that go wrong. I'm an ex-Nordic ski instructor, skate, telemark, and classic skiing. So I've been a skier most of my life. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I'm a mountaineer. So I spend a lot of time up high in the mountains. So I have a tendency to want to go to the top of things. So you'll see that in some of the photos. So let's start by talking about what is winter. Winter for a mountaineer is somewhere between the fall and spring equinox, which is roughly December 21st to March 20th. From a formal standpoint, it changes year to year depending on the moon cycles. But here in central Idaho, it's kind of anytime there's a snow on the ground, which means October to mid-June. And this picture shows a popular hike that we do up to Crystal Lake. On June 11th, the lake was still frozen. However, because the way winter conditions work, he's wearing a t-shirt, so it was a nice day in the snow. But it's important to remember when we talk about each of these hikes and the conditions and the equipment, that it varies tremendously day to day, hour to hour. And that's one of the hallmarks of winter, is it is very changeable. So what is winter hiking? For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to include hiking, snowshoeing, and cross-country skiing in its various forms. And I'll talk about, these pictures show up later, and I'll tell you a little bit about each of them. So who can go on a winter hike? The saying is for cross-country skiing is that if you can walk, you can ski. Now, I don't completely agree with that, but if you can walk, and you can probably snowshoe. Good cross-country skiing takes a little more technique than that. But there's a really wide spectrum of people who can do this. The picture on the left is my daughter when she was 9 years old, skiing around Moores Mountain outside Boise. And the picture on the right is my father snowshoeing at 83 years old, just outside McCall. And if you have lucky parents, they can tow you. This is another daughter when she was 4 years old. This is back in 1986. That sort of dates me a little bit. But the kids can go too and enjoy. You have to spend a little more time preparing and taking care of them, but they like being out in the snow. So how long does it have to be a winter hike? Your winter hike might be 30 minutes. You could also go overnight. And speaking of overnight, there's various levels of overnight winter hiking. The bottom picture on the left is tent camping at Hellroaring Lake in the Sawtooth. The upper right is a delicious dinner at the Rock Ridge Yurt near Idaho City. The lower right is Stoley Meadows Guard Station. And you should be aware that the Forest Service has buildings that they rent during the winter that you can stay in. And obviously staying inside a building or inside a yurt with a wood stove is a much cushier way to spend your winter nights. So why go winter hiking? Because winter hiking is cool. During the winter, different shapes occur. The trees look neat with snow on them. You get to see things like these frozen waterfalls. It's a spectacular time to be out and about in the outside. During the winter, you get to see hints of visitors that you might not be aware of during the summer. On the left, you can see the bear tracks, and I should point out that those are my tire tracks. When I pulled in, there weren't any bear tracks, but when I came back to the car, voila. On the right, it's hard to see that there's a skier off on the right, but that's up on the ridge above Big Creek Summit, which is the road that goes from Cascade to Worm Lake. And those are Wolverine tracks. We followed those tracks for, I don't know, a mile or two. Wolverines like high places too. During the winter, the scenery is especially attractive because the snow brings out the contrast on the shapes, the ridges, the terrain, and you get to see cool frozen lakes. Now, my friend Art here is a little braver than I am. I'm more like Sam, the dog on the right. I wasn't going to go out on there, but Art was wishing that he had his skates. It was amazingly smooth. There's a lot of solitude during the winter, much more so in the summer. This is on Vienna Peak in the Sawtooth. We're looking out at the Sawtooth Valley, looking towards Stanley, if you will. And we were the only people out there that day, you know, and we know it because there were no other tracks but ours. So what are some of the hazards that you want to face during the winter? Well, first of all, it's cold. This was the car thermometer as we're driving into Stanley to go snowshoeing. No, we didn't go snowshoeing at -33. We're smart. We waited till it was only -28 before we got out of the car. There's the hazard of wrong gear. This is the international sign for it's time to put on your snowshoes. Unfortunately, this is on North Wind Peak in the Lost Rivers. Unfortunately, we convinced ourselves that we didn't need snowshoes this day. And so we had to resort to hands and knees crawling across some of the snow patches. There's snow slides, also known as avalanches. This is a very short avalanche on a rock face on Miners Peak on the South Fork of the Salmon River. But you can see those are big, heavy blocks of snow. It doesn't take much to get buried or to get trapped. And so avalanches are very definitely a hazard during the winter. And I'm not going to go into avalanche science or any of that here. I'm just going to say that if you're going to spend time around, not even on, but around steep slopes in the snow, you need to learn about avalanches. And I highly recommend taking an avalanche course. Things hide under the snow, creeks. This happened to just be a hole. And yes, Dave is wearing snowshoes at this moment. I waited until I made sure that he was okay before I took the picture, and then I started laughing. This is on Thunderbolt Mountain on the South Fork of the Salmon River. Navigation can be difficult during the winter because trails are buried, trail signs are buried. And then because of the weather, sometimes it's hard to tell where you are. And this is on Cuddy Mountain near Cambridge. And you can tell there's not a lot of landmarks to navigate with. Now, you could follow your tracks back to where you came from, but if the wind's blowing, your tracks can disappear very quickly. And some electronic devices you might use don't work well when it's cold. So those are all things you want to remember if you're going to be out in these kind of conditions. And perhaps first, but I've got it last here, is that the roads can be treacherous. And like I said, winter can extend past that March 21st date. This is actually on May 23rd going over Horseshoe Bend Hill. We'd been in the Sawtooth and we ended up, we weren't really ready for that much snow. So we had a very slow drive home that day. So let's talk about winter safety a little bit. Probably the most important thing you can do for your safety is to let somebody know where you're going, how long you'll be gone, who you're with, what kind of gear you have, and then stick to the plan. You know, the best practice would be to supply somebody a map and say, here's where we're going to park, here's where we're going to go, this is our route. And so if something goes wrong, you've put search and rescue way ahead of the program because they know where to look. Then we've got to talk about your car. You want to make sure your car is ready for any emergencies. And this is a picture showing studded snow tires, a shovel. The yellow coil thing at the bottom is a tow strap. Just above it in the box is sand. That's not very much sand, but it's enough to make the picture. The white bag above that is tire chains. And then above that is a foam pad, sleeping bag, spare hat, and spare gloves. And if you've ever had the pleasure of putting on chains when it's wet and cold out, you'll understand what the foam pad's for. It so you can lay down on the ground, and then the warm glove, the extra gloves and hat is so that you can have something to get wet in because you get soggy putting chains on. You want to make sure that you have another set to go have your fun with. You want to dress for the conditions. And again, there's all kinds of things you can read about how to dress, equipment to use, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to just say, make sure you dress for conditions and a little bit more. You want to anticipate that your idea what the conditions might be a little off, and you want to be more prepared for that. This is on top of Grand Peak in the City of Rocks, and you can see everybody's got their parkas on because the wind is howling. In your pack, you need to have the 10 essentials. That's what's in that orange bag there. But you should also have a spare hat, spare gloves, spare socks, a headlamp, because during the winter, the days are short. And then I always want to have one more insulated jacket than I think I'm going to need. My rule is that when I'm out in the mountains, I want to be able to spend the night out if I have to. I broke my leg in the mountains once. I didn't have to spend the night out, but I wanted to make sure that I'm going to live through it. I might not be happy, but I'll live through it. So inside the possibles bag, as I call it, is the 10 essentials. And so I'm going to run through here. Upper left, the yellow bag is actually a bivy sack. It's like a giant uninsulated sleeping bag, but something you can get out of the weather inside of. Just below that, the sort of burgundy colored bag is actually a water filter, which normally I wouldn't use much during the winter, but it's so light I include it anyway. To the right of the water filter is a matchbox and a lighter for starting fires. There's a couple Cliff Bars there. You want to have some high calorie food because your engine and your heater are calories. You want to have some food with you. To the top of that, the red bag is a first aid bag. And then you can see a Swiss Army knife. There's a folding saw there. That saw is so you can cut branches off a tree if you want to start a fire. The plastic bag has the unmentionables in it. It's toilet paper and hand cleaner. Right underneath there is a compass. To the right is hand warmers, which I think of as sort of winter first aid. And then below that's a repair kit with nylon strap, duct tape, some P cord, parachute cord, and some copper wire. I've been on more than one outing where somebody's snowshoe broke and we had to wire the thing back together again so you could get home. Trying to travel on one snowshoe does not work, believe me. And last, you want to plan for the cold. First of all, batteries don't like the cold, so don't depend on your cell phone to give you good navigation if you can't keep it warm. And it's, particularly if it's not charged. Camelbacks and hose type water systems don't tend to work very well. I mean, there's some things you can do to make them work better, but they tend to freeze. And then you just have a big frozen lump in your pack. And of course, the most serious hazard on just a day trip is going to be frostbite of your hands and your feet. And so having good equipment to take care of that's important. And the last thing is to have an emergency plan. This is a Garmin InReach. There's something called the Spot. These are satellite communication devices that can save your life because they'll allow you to contact help when a cell phone won't work. So I've been doing this for a long time and I've got a lot of tricks that I'm not even aware are tricks anymore, but I sat down and thought about a few ideas or things that I think are fabulous for traveling during the winter. First, I love having a pair of thick wool mittens. Wool mittens are light, they're warm, they're pretty wind resistant. Even if they're wet, they'll stay warm, and they're really tough. A thermos of something hot to drink on a cold day is fabulous. A lot of times I'll carry a water bottle also, but a little bit of hot tea, boy, that really makes the day. And the folding chair. I read a quote the other day that necessities are a luxury, but luxuries are a necessity. And so I like having a few luxuries around. That folding chair also works as a ground pad because it's closed cell foam that it will keep you off the snow and insulate you if you have to have that. A few other ideas. I always try to change my clothes before it's required. Like, if you're going up onto a ridge and you can see the winds blowing up there, don't wait until you're in the full force of the wind to put on a parka. Put it on a little earlier and stay comfortable. Never set your gloves on the ground. This is something I learned skiing through the White Clouds more than 50 years ago. Insulation doesn't make you warm, it only keeps you warm. So if you have cold hands and you put on cold gloves, you haven't gained anything. So you want to make sure your gloves don't get cold. So if your hands get really cold, you put them in a warmer glove and that'll help warm your hands up. I like wearing a baseball cap underneath my ski hat because I wear glasses and the baseball cap keeps the snow off my glasses so I'm not looking through the speckles quite so much. We talked briefly about water freezing your Camelback. Well, water can freeze in your water bottle also, but water freezes from the top. So if you take your water bottle and turn it upside down in your pack, you'll still be able to get the lid open even when it starts turning to ice. Make sure your water bottle doesn't leak, please. And then drive home happy. I always like to have a bag of dry clothes in my car. When I come back and I'm sweaty or soggy and I've got to drive for an hour and a half, it is so nice to put on dry clothes. I mean, maybe I'll be shivering while I make the change from my wet, cold ski clothes into my dry driving clothes. But boy, sitting in the car with dry clothes and some dry shoes is so nice. So we've been talking about all these things about preparing for the hikes. Where do you go? Let's talk about some cool places to go for winter hikes. So I'm thinking that a lot of the audience is in or around Boise. So it's sort of, this presentation is weighted towards hiking around Boise, but it's not exclusive. But this is Turner Gulch out by Lucky Peak Reservoir. You can actually see the reservoir in the background there. There's a little game trail, nice little hiking trail. A lot of times you'll see deer and elk out here. It's a great little getaway. And as long as the ground isn't muddy, it's a nice hike. And that's one thing about hiking around the foothills and other places too, is if there's mud on the trail, you shouldn't be there. Now, if you're planning your hike right, you know, on a muddy day in Boise, sometimes it's frozen in the morning. You can go walk when it's frozen. Just make sure you get back before it thaws out. And also remember that during inversions, sometimes it's frozen down below and not higher up. And at that point, it's time to turn around. This is a cool place to go. It's Craters of the Moon. Sometimes you can go cross-country skiing there, but on this day, it was, you know, nice walking. The snow was firm enough to walk on top, and it was intermittent, so we were able to kind of cruise around, and we ended up hitting a paved road to complete our loop. There was no traffic. The road was closed, made for a really pleasant hike, and all the volcanic formations are fabulous. This is a little more adventuresome. This is McGowan Peak in the Lost River Range. You're looking at a peak that's about 10,800 feet. We got to use both snowshoes and just little light post holing, we'll call it. But on a sunny day with the right gear, it's just incredible country. This is Jump Creek in the Owyhee Range. Oftentimes, this is like the Boise foothills. If it's not muddy, it's really nice walking. Desert walking, you can kind of go wherever you want. And you can wander around the hills. There's all kinds of neat rock formations. There is a trail up the creek itself that during the summer can have rattlesnakes, and it definitely has poison oak. And so this time of year, the poison oak's dormant and the snakes aren't out. So it's a great time to go out and explore the Jump Creek area. Here's a hike near Sun Valley. This was snowshoe, not really a hike, up Johnstone Peak, up Pioneer Range. We drove to the end of the East Fork Road, and we parked down there in the shade, and I think it was like 10 below zero. It was pretty bitter. But about here, we were up in the sun, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, I got to get some of these clothes off. And you can see that George has bare hands at the moment. It ended up being a really pleasant day after we got out of the ice box. And fabulous views. That's actually Sun Valley Ski Area in the background there. Another desert kind of hike is down on the Snake River at Guffey Butte. This is Celebration Park. This is an old railroad bridge across the river, and then there's trails on the other side. We hiked up onto that ridge that you can see with all kinds of interesting rock formations, great views, and this is a fairly popular place, but that means that we saw like maybe 10 people. This one's just too obvious from Boise. This is the Boise Ridge Road. We skied up to the behind Bogus Basin and got on the Ridge Road and skied across that road that you can see going out the ridge. And it's sort of the middle of the picture. That's 8th Street. And if you've got a lot of stamina and the snow's in good condition, you can ski on across and ski all the way down Rocky Canyon. And I've skied all the way into town numerous times. This is really snow dependent though. So you've got to kind of watch and go when it's good. Here in McCall, we live in snow country, but we get tired of it sometimes. And if we go down by Riggins, it's about 3,000 feet lower, and you can get out of the snow. A real popular hike for those escaping McCall's Winter is the Rapid River hike, which starts at the Rapid River Fish Hatchery outside of Riggins. It's a really nice trail. There's several bridges across the creek, and we denote how far up the trail we went by how many bridges you saw. I hiked a second bridge this time, and that's a really nice hike. Here's one that's a little further east. This is the Lemhi Range. When you're getting close to Wyoming at this point. In fact, we could see the Tetons quite nicely early in the morning before the haze really broke in. It's top of Saddle Mountain. You're looking south here, and you can see some of the big cinder buttes that are out on the plains there. This again it's just shy of 11,000 feet, I believe. But if you watch your P's and Q's, a lot of times Eastern Idaho doesn't get very much snow, and you can see that this is the end of December, and I don't think we used snowshoes. We were able to hike the whole way with minimal post holing. Back to Boise again. This is 5 Mile Creek, which is up Rocky Canyon. There's a trail that goes all the way up here. Notice that we're not in the sun because we want to be on frozen ground because it was that time of year. But a really nice hike, and you can walk, the trail goes most of the way up to the tree line there, and then we just walk through the sagebrush to get all the way up into the tree line, and we finally hit snow up there. This is another McCall hike. This is Kelly Mountain, which is on the Salmon River upstream from Riggins. We started below snow line on this day, and then maybe about halfway up we got into solid snow. But you notice that we're not wearing snowshoes there. It was kind of marginal no snowshoe day, one of those days where we might have had the wrong equipment if the snow conditions had been a little different. But gorgeous views looking out across the Salmon Canyon here, there. Over on the right on the horizon, that's Patrick Butte, which you can get to from McCall, but it's on the other side of the river from where we are. There's an old lookout on Kelly Mountain. There's been a book written about fighting fires on Kelly Mountain, and Walt Disney did a movie about Kelly Mountain. There's another Boise area hike, although this is really in Mountain Home. It's Bruneau Sand Dunes. Obviously, there's no snow there, and even in February, you can get t-shirt days. Great place to walk. It can be very windy, but very pleasant conditions, neat area. And I think that the Bruneau Dune is supposed to be the tallest single station dune in the US or something to that effect. Interesting. Here's sort of a secret hike if you're from Boise. This is upstream from Garden Valley, heading towards Loman. It's called Gallagher Creek, and we hiked up to Gallagher Peak. There's old maps show a trail going up this valley. Current maps don't, but the trail's there. It's kind of a deer and elk trail, and if you hike it this time of year, you'll see a ton of game up there. It's really neat, and a neat little escape. I've done it 3 or 4 times and never saw anybody else. This is in Indian Valley, which is between Council and Emmett, if you will, kind of. It's an interesting area. People don't go here very much, but it's wide open spaces, rolling hills. It is a checkerboard of private property and BLM property. So you want to check your map so that you don't trespass. But if you're on the BLM property and it's not too muddy, it's great hiking. What you're looking at there in the background is West Mountain, which normally you look at as you're driving towards Cascade. This hike is a favorite of mine. I call it the Peninsula. And on the right, that's Highway 55. And on the left is the road to Garden Valley. And so you park at the bridge at Banks and then hike the spine of that ridge. And it's really neat because you've got a river on either side of you. And then if you want, you can hike as far as we did on this day and walk up into the snow line. Lots of game here. We saw tons of elk. Really a neat place to visit. And it's only about, 35, 40 minutes out of Boise. This one's a little further afield. This is Jerry Peak in the Jim McClure Jerry Peak Wilderness. The way you get here is you go north of Mackey and then swing up like you're going to go back to Ketchum on the Trail Creek Road. And again, there's a little bit of a private property, a federal property matrix in here. You want to sort of check. Some of it's posted, so it makes it a little more obvious. But here in the end of December, we were able to walk a lot of area. We did have to put our snowshoes on off and on, although it seems to me like some people post hold and others put their snowshoes on, one of those gear questions. But really beautiful view across the valley of the Lost Rivers, and a unique area. And most people know where the City of Rocks is, but people think it's just for rock climbing. It's got fabulous hiking trails. And you're looking up at all these wonderful granite towers everywhere, and it's a dry climate. Of course, it can be also very cold, so you want to check your weather before you go. This is a little more traditional ski picture. This is backcountry skiing, which I consider to be cross-country skiing, but with alpine touring bindings. This is Copper Mountain up by Stanley. Beautiful day, and you can probably tell there was some really fun powder this day. You may have heard of people hiking in Hell's Canyon, and I'm here to tell you it's wonderful hiking, particularly during the winter season. You can drive to Pittsburgh Landing from Whitebird year-round. They keep the road open. You get down to Pittsburgh Landing and you're way down. I think it's 1,500 feet or something at Pittsburgh Landing. And there's a really nice trail going upriver through Hell's Canyon to the Kirkwood Ranch, which is a historic ranch. It's maintained by the Forest Service as such. It was the home of Len Jordan, who was an Idaho State Senator. And I just finished reading a book written by Len's wife about their time there. Fascinating. And then one of the things about winters, you can still do trail work. This is on March 19th, working with Idaho Trails Association on the Salmon River on the Sheep Creek project. And so I want to close my discussion of cool places to go by saying it's not too early to go out and do trail projects with ITA. So how do you find out about these places? There's a few different resources. Some of these are for finding places. The others are for preparing for your trip. First of all, you want to check road conditions. Idaho.gov has road conditions, and you can find out whether roads are open or closed. It's important to check. I've had to go around the long way to Stanley from Boise before because Highway 21 was closed. If you go to caltopo.com, you can look at online topo maps, and they have a feature that will allow you to see if property is private or public. And they also have a slope angle, which can help you determine whether a given route might be unsafe because it's too steep with snow conditions. The Idaho State Parks website offers information about cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and hiking. Look at guidebooks. There aren't any, I'm not aware of guidebooks that talk specifically about snowshoe routes, but they talk about hiking trails. And if you're adventuresome and you have the skills, pretty much any hiking trail can be turned into a snowshoe trail. And same thing for cross-country skiing as well. There's lots of websites around talking about cool places to go hike, places to snowshoe, places to ski. One of my favorites is called Idaho Alpine Zone. And if you go to his trip report section, he has a page just about snowshoe trips that he's done. So I highly recommend that. Or you can just Google Idaho snowshoe or Idaho cross-country ski, and you're going to find lots and lots of pages. But be adventuresome. Go out and dream up your own trips. But I recommend that if you're not familiar with winter travel, that you start out slow. Build on what you already know. Think of it as doing a progression. Your first trip might be snowshoeing on a trail that you've hiked before, so you kind of know what to expect. And the only change is the snowshoeing in the winter conditions. Build up slow, learn your skills, build your stamina, and have fun. So at this point, I'll entertain questions. If you can put those in the chat and I'll answer them as best as I can, or Pam can hop in and help.
Yeah, thanks, John. So you didn't mention your website. It also has a lot of great information.
Splatsky.com.
wealth of resources on John's webpage as well. So anybody have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat there. Or if anybody has any great winter hikes that they want to share with the group, feel free to put those in the chat as well. John's website, splatsky.com. Here, I'll put it up there for you. Okay, so I just put John's website in the chat. If anybody's interested. His membership from January 1st to December. I think membership is just like from when you became a member to the next year. Yeah, and if you're unsure of your membership status, feel free to send ITA an email. I can't remember if it's info@trailsassociation.org or trails out of, it's on the website. You could check and have somebody check on your membership status.
I have a question about dogs. I do take my dog with me most of the time, but not always. She loves being in the snow. She has a collection of different jackets that I put on her. I kind of have temperature ranges. And then if I'm going to go somewhere where I'm going to sit down and have an extended lunch or something, I actually take her sleeping bag. But she's a short-haired dog. She doesn't have a lot of insulation. She's fine as long as she's moving, but if she lays down, I've got to take extra care for her. Also, because she's a short-haired dog, I don't have to do it. I don't have problems with ice balls on her feet, which is a lot of dogs have issues with that.
Beth Norton, what about cats? Maybe you could be the pioneer of cat winter adventuring.
That's right. Question about assessing avalanche danger. Yes, there's a variety of avalanche sites that you can visit that are specific to different areas. Like there's a Payette Avalanche Center. There's the Wood River Avalanche. I don't have the name correct. The Stanley has an avalanche center that you can check conditions on, and you should do that anytime you're heading out into snow conditions. But you also want to understand avalanche conditions yourself so you can assess them. Avalanche conditions can vary within 100 yards.
Yeah. Oh, somebody made a comment that Critters of the Moon will groom the road for snowshoe and ski when there is enough snow, and they post that on their website when available. Oh, thanks, Michael. That's a good tip. Claire asked, do the Garmin and Spot units have problems with the cold? In my experience, they seem to traditionally have a better battery than something like a cell phone, but anything with, like, I think you're probably going to say, John, anything with a battery is going to get a little bit zapped in the cold. That's faster correct. Than it would on a regular day.
I read a great trip report once about a guy who was on Rainier who had to tape a heat pack to his GPS because it was a whiteout conditions. You couldn't navigate without the GPS, but the batteries wouldn't stay warm. If the batteries are cold, they won't put out any energy, and then the device won't work. So if you want your inReach to work, you need to put it somewhere inside a parka or something. They're pretty water resistant, and so sweat's not going to bother them.
See. Rebecca asks, any dispersed camping recommendations around Stanley in the winter?
I would always refer you to the land manager, which is the Forest Service, for probably what you're looking at. But generally speaking, they're going to let you camp most places. You want to follow the same leave no trace practices you would during the summer. And hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'm assuming some of that also just depends on their own snow, because I don't know that they keep any other like roads plowed more than, regular, just for things like camping. So that will probably limit some options.
That's right. Yeah, it's hard to find places to park and leave your car overnight.
I do know that it seems like I've been along like the road going east from Stanley along the river. It's a little bit lower elevation,
Yeah.
and some of those campgrounds are kind of just, I think, a free for all in the winter time. And if you can get in there, you can just stay there.
I've only stayed at a couple Forest Service cabins during the winter. Stoley Meadows, I really enjoyed. We skied in there, and at that time, the hot springs was still in shape. So we went and used the hot springs. Last time I visited the Vulcan hot springs, somebody had it had fallen apart, hadn't been maintained. But that was a nice trip. I'm more familiar with the yurts. I like all the yurts above Idaho City. I've stayed at 2 or 3 of them, and I've stayed at other yurts here and there. The yurt systems tend to be really nice. So I'd recommend those as well as Forest Service cabins.
Richard Platt asked that you tell us what is on your website.
That's my dad. My website has all kinds of stuff on it. Adventures are around Idaho and elsewhere with my family and friends.
Okay, Mark Whitnam says Guide GPS is a great source. Also, kind of like CalTopo, great resource for plotting, getting information. And I use Guide GPS, and they even have some layers that you can bring in that will show you like snow cover. So I've used that like like early and late season to be like, is that snow free up there? And again, you have to take that stuff with a grain of salt because it's an estimate, right? But it'll give you an idea of if you're talking about a couple feet of snow or just a little bit of snow. So some of those resources are available through those kind of applications as well.
Yeah, and NOAA also maps snow depth. You got to dig around a little bit, but they have snow depth information.
Yeah, and I think with the NOAA stuff, and it might be the same source, you can pull those down as like KMLs that you can put on Google Earth as well. And so that's kind of a nice feature if you can find that data. Let's see. Do you have experience with kick sleds? I don't even know what a kick sled is.
A kick sled is a sled that you can stand on the runners and slide around. Again, they're good for ice roads.
Art mentions that Sawtooth Avalanche Center is a good resource for around the Ketchum-Stanley area. Yeah, I think if you just Google wherever you're going avalanche, you'll find some resources that will be good for you. Don says no plowed roads are plowed there. I'm assuming she's talking about Stanley. Art says there's a campground just up the southward pit from Garden Valley that is open all year with hot springs. Yeah. Are there other good backcountry ski spots around Copper Peak?
Yes, that the whole area around Cape Horn, which is Banner Creek Summit area, offers some really fabulous skiing. Copper Mountain's probably the closest to the highway, making it the most accessible. But people ski some of the other peaks around there, and either unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's been some fires up there which clear things out and make for wide open skiing.
So kind of along those lines, I have a question for you. So as kind of a novice winter adventurer myself, I'm like, oh, it'd be so great if we could just go climb up that mountain or go do this. But, my biggest concern always is that chance of avalanche. Are there things you can either look for or like, try and stick to the trees or like some signs of like safety without being like an avalanche expert?
Yes, and those things are covered in avalanche safety courses because the first method for dealing with avalanches to stay out of them and recognize avalanche terrain. There's also excellent books. Like I have a book that's called Snow Sense that I think is only about 70 pages, but does a good job covering the basics. You don't have to be a snow scientist to recognize hazardous conditions though. There's some very basic rules. I can run through a couple very quickly. Avalanches generally occur between 25 and 50 degree slopes, which, if you go skiing at Bogus, most of the slopes are less steep than that. Not all of them, but most of them. You want to avoid conditions that are rapidly changing, particularly rapidly warming, because heavy snow on top of light snow is going to slide. And so if it's been snowing and it rains, that's a bad thing. Or if the temperature just skyrockets up, that's why in the spring, well, just the change in the spring when it goes from a cold day to a warm day, that can be enough to cause problems. Around here, we have issues with unstable snow on north slopes, where in the fall we get a lot of hoarfrost and then it snows on top of that and it doesn't bond together. You want to avoid slopes where the wind has been packing the snow. They call it snow pillows underneath cornices, where you have again, a lot of what allows the avalanches to happen is inconsistent layering in the snow. So if you have a bunch of hard snow on top of soft snow and then you break the hard snow, it's going to slide. You mentioned being in the trees. The thought is that if the trees are any more widespread than your own arms, meaning about 6 feet apart, they're not going to provide any anchoring to the snow, and they can actually be more hazardous because a lot of times people don't get buried, they get beat up when they get caught in a slide. So those are a couple real basic ones. That's not complete. It's complicated. So but you want to become educated, because the number one thing is just stay out of avalanche terrain. So if you recognize avalanches, like if you see, oh, this is avalanche before, that's not a good place to be.
Right. Yeah, it's a good sign. Great, thanks. Yeah, and I put a link to that Snow Sense book, or a review of it, in the chat. Be a good resource for some other people as well. Scott Acker asking us about wolves in the backcountry.
You're not allowed to eat those, Scott. There's wolves in the backcountry, and they move around during the winter. I'm not sure why Scott was asking that.
Yeah, especially I would think if you're in really deep snow, probably not going to see them.
Yeah, if you're out in the wilds, you'll see tracks of animals that were there in the summer, but you didn't know it. So there's probably wolves there in the summer too, but you don't see their tracks. But in the snow, the evidence is there. You see wolf prints and elk and all kinds of stuff. Like I said, I've seen a lot of wolverine prints, but I've hardly ever seen wolverines. But the prints are exciting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the greatest things about winter, is you get to see some of that traffic you just would never see when there's no snow on the ground.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, sometimes you see a big, like, giant wolverine, you might be like, whoa. A little bit more high alert now. All right. Oh, wow. Yeah. Saw 3 wolves in Stanley. Okay, any other last minute? Do you carry bear spray?
I don't. Bears, well, usually during the winter, you won't see bears because they're going to be hibernating. But because Idaho winter extends until through the spring in some places, you might see a bear. And in the spring, it's not a good time to see a bear. They'll be grumpy and hungry. But my experience with bears is they always run the other way. Some of my friends say it's a hygiene issue.
Oh, do you ever carry a gun?
No. I,
And
I've never seen a wild animal that didn't run the other direction.
yeah, I've only ever had one experience with a bear, and it was a clear false charge, but scary nonetheless. But it still never got close enough to me that I could have even probably reached it with bear spray.
We were hiking across a meadow by Stanley Lake, and we had a couple juvenile moose challenge us. And we were walking
That's
along.
even
And,
scarier.
yeah, well, my friend said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a tree."
Mark says in Southeast Idaho carry bear spray around. We do see them over here.
That's a
Yeah,
that's a good point. It depends on where you are. I have carried bear spray before. I carried it when I was in the Frank Church last year. I definitely carried it when I was in Glacier, but generally around these areas in the winter, I don't carry bear spray.
right. Yeah, and in Southeast Idaho, you also have the probability of the grizzly bears. So I always carry bear spray in grizzly bear country.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we going to just kind of wrap it up here. Thanks everybody so much for joining us tonight. If you have any further questions about the webinar or anything on these topics, feel free to send an email to ITA, and we can either shove it off to John or answer it for you. This recording will be put up on our YouTube channel at some point. For those of you who have signed up, I'll send you a reminder email about that so you can get more information. And John, if there's any other information you want to pass on, I can put that in the email as well. Thanks so much, John, for your words of wisdom and cool adventuring spots. While you were talking, I had my guy open and I was making little pins on my map. So now I have a couple of more ideas too. So awesome. Thanks so much, John. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening.
Get out there and be safe.
Yes, be safe.